The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning. How's everybody doing today? Let me unmute all you guys. How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Good. Can everybody see me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right, Tony? Hey, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have Dan, Johnny, and Keith on. We'll give everybody just a few more minutes. I think we had a couple more people register, so if you guys don't mind hanging out for like a minute or two, we'll see if anybody else is going to jump on, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
All right, so while we're waiting, has anybody had any good April Fool's pranks pulled on them today? No?
Not yet.
Not yet. The day's still young?
Not unless this is one.
No, it is not. I assure you, it is not. Okay. Okay, so it's noon, so let's go ahead and get started. If everybody can see me, I'm going to go ahead and just want to introduce what we're going to do here. My name is Joe Tortola, and what we'd like to do today is go through Flight Control Plus and go through how it works, how to use it, and how to sell it, and hopefully how it can help increase your business and grow your market share in your business. We'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently a goose consultant for the green industry. I was formerly with a company called True Green, and I literally sold thousands of acres in about a 10-year time frame. I sold about over $100,000 annually in Northeast Ohio for the True Green company. And I also traveled the country and I consulted companies, large and small lawn care companies, live predator companies, pest control companies that use this product. So feel pretty comfortable. I saw every business out there and every business model, I should say, and I just want to help you guys grow your business. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. This is going to be in like about 3 or 4 different sections, and I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to ask questions between sections. So I'm going to mute everybody right now, and then when we do the questions, I'll give you guys the chance to talk. Okay, with that said, here we go. Okay, Flight Control Plus, stop the drop. This is a specially prepared presentation for the Flight Control Plus certified applicators. When Archeon was looking for a advanced repellent technology, they worked with the USDA Wildlife Service that initiated a search that would be a liquid application. They wanted it to be long-lasting and weatherproof, something that works well without harming humans, wildlife, vegetation, or the water they surround. And they basically wanted to effectively modify the habitat and the behavior of the giant Canada goose. Flight control works in 2 ways. The first way is an anti-feeding warning. Geese have a strong gut reaction after they eat the treated turf. Now, it doesn't harm them in a permanent way. It doesn't make them sick. It doesn't make them go to the bathroom. But what it does do is it gives them that gut reaction, just like if you and I were to go to a restaurant and you get a bad meal, you tend not to go back there. And the second way that it works is it does have a visual warning. Geese can see in an ultraviolet spectrum of light. You and I have 2 rods and cones in our eyes. They have 3, so they can see it, but we cannot. And this is how we perceive that they see it. It looks different to them. This obviously would be treated. This would be untreated. So they sample the grass. They get a gut reaction. They see it in the ultraviolet spectrum, and they associate that with, hey, this isn't a good place to feed, and it causes a very strong consequence. As I mentioned earlier, we're modifying their behavior through a learned response. We're teaching the grass not to feed in a desired area. Geese feed on a certain area that they feel safe, food and safety. When a goose samples the treated area, it's going to get a very quick digestive irritation. The goose learns quickly to stop feeding in that area, in the treated area. And what I always say is if they don't eat, they don't create the droppings. So without the ability to feed, the goose is forced to find an alternative site. And flight control does, the biggest thing is it does deliver a strong consequence. This isn't threat with warning. This is threat with consequence. This illustration was taken up at the Plumbrook facility, USDA facility in Sandusky, Ohio. This red line denotes where it was treated to the right and where it was not treated on the left. And this bird was in a pen. They couldn't fly in or out. And they stopped short of that line, and they would not feed in this area. So that gets back to the visual. This goose obviously has sampled the turf, and they know it's not a good area to feed on. Okay, so let me get everybody back here. And, oh, where's my Camtasia? Here we go. Okay, everybody back on. So what are some questions you guys have on flight control about how it works?
Yeah.
We can't see slides.
Okay, let me get back to that. Okay, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what are your guys' questions on flight control and how it works?
Joe, we can't see the slides. I think you're doing a slide presentation, right?
Yes, I am.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't see the slides.
Okay, let
I
me.
can't either.
I apologize. Let me do this again. How about now?
Nah.
Yeah. Do you have your... Oh, yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
You good now?
Now we... Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
That's good. Yes.
Okay, so I did all that talking, and you guys didn't get to see any of the slides, right?
I know, I tried to do that. Do you see the question box on the right of your screen? I
Yeah.
tried to type it to you.
Okay.
But yeah, okay.
Well, no problem. Let's just go back. We'll just go back through it, and if everybody just keeps quiet during the presentation, we won't get feedback. I'll just keep everybody on so we're not muted. So this is the first slide. It explains about how flight control developed this product with the USDA, and these are the two slides that how it works. The anti-feeding. This would be the untreated turf, and the bottom would be the treated. And they can see it. It's got the ultraviolet light spectrum on here, and they can see it after they eat it. They get the gut reaction. They see it, and this is how we perceive that they see it. So that's the visual warning and the anti-feeding warning also. And this area here, this, as I mentioned, this was the facility up in Sandusky, the Plumbrook facility, USDA. The area on the right here was treated with flight control. The area on the left was not treated, and you can see that guy. He won't cross that line. Now, interestingly enough, these birds were fenced in. They were going through a period of molt where they couldn't fly, and they would not feed in that area. So, flight control delivers a very strong consequence. And that leads me to my questions slide. How are you guys doing on questions? Does everybody understand how it works or have any questions on how it works?
No, I understand how it works.
Okay.
I do too.
Okay. Is anybody currently using flight control?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Well, let's move on to, who's going to use flight control? Depending on your company, whether you're a live predator or you're a chemical application company or both, large and small homeowners association, athletic turf, parks and recreation department, and municipalities, our #1 user of Flight Control Plus is athletic turf through schools, municipalities, and private groups. Anytime you have conflict with geese and turf, and it seems like with the athletic turf, they're maintained, they're fertilized, they're large areas of grass that geese can see a long way. They love to feed on those. You get a bunch of kids out there playing soccer or kids playing football, and the droppings, it's a problem. Waterfront properties and marinas. We recently did a show in Cleveland, and our #1 complaint was marinas. People up along Lake Erie, they were going out to their boats, and the geese want to hang out on the dock sites. That's a great place to treat the turf around those marinas. Corporate sites, universities and school systems, and that's probably our second largest customers is school systems. And we have the product available in the 2.5 gallon jugs, the 1 gallon jug, and we're going to have the quarts out very soon for use on the professional applicator market. Some of the suggested selling strategies, a typical flight control program is a 5 or 6 application program. every site's going to be different depending on your scenario with geese. But one thing's for sure: you're dealing with resident geese. They're not going anywhere. They're hanging out. They're not migratory birds. They may pond hop and forage and be gone for a month or so, but a typical program is going to be 5 or 6 applications. That's going to get you through the growing season. We're here in Northeast Ohio, and that's what we do up here. If you're down south or you have a longer growing season, you could increase those applications depending on your needs. When using flight control and pricing it, always set a minimum stop charge. Small opportunities could turn into large opportunities, but you want to make sure that you're compensated for your time, and also have a price breaker for larger sites to be competitive and provide a large service at a competitive price. Avoid partial and one-time applications. You just don't get the desired results. It will work for a very short period of time. Flight control doesn't wash off the grass blades. It is water insoluble. If you apply it on dry turf prior to rain or snow, it's going to stay on there, but it can and will be mowed off as the grass grows, and we'll go over that here in the next series of slides. Flight Control Plus is a high revenue, high profit service, and we don't want to gouge the customers, but there is a lot of demand for it, and I'm sure you guys know people are pretty emotional about geese. So it definitely has the potential to make you some money and give the customers excellent results. And it's a highly effective way to reduce geese and improve your efficiencies. If you're a live predator, you're a dog service, a lot of companies across the country, they're incorporating this in with their dog services, and they're still running the dogs, but they're cutting it down from going out there 2-3 times a day, maybe to 2-3 times a week. I call Flight Control Plus a dog in a bottle. It's on there 24/7. Now it doesn't take the take the dogs out of the scenario. It just helps them makes it more efficient. Okay, any questions on selling strategies and who's going to purchase the service?
I have a question about for the frequency of the application.
Okay.
So are you looking at less than once a month then for five or 6 applications in a season? I mean, I'm in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So we still have snow on the ground right now.
Gotcha.
But I've used this for the last 2 years at one client who lives on a lakefront.
Okay.
The first year, everything went really good, and we did 3 applications. Last year, the problem that we ran into was it was very dry.
Okay.
And there wasn't any grass. But we still did the application, and the geese moved onto the property, even though there wasn't anything to eat.
Okay.
So we had some sort of a failure there. And then the folks that live at this place, they know what they refer to as their resident geese, as opposed to transient geese.
Right.
So they did notice that there were transient geese moving in onto their lake. They have about 400 feet of lakefront.
Okay, so it's a large area.
It's a large area, yeah.
Okay. Well, let me address the dry turf. The mode of ingestion is they have to eat the turf, and we have to get an adequate amount of Flight Control Plus on the turf. What rate were you putting that down?
We're using it at the high rate.
Okay. 3
ounces.
Okay, so you're putting it through a backpack or something like that.
We're using there's a 100-gallon tank.
Okay.
A gas pump, basically.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, we're going to go over that section here shortly, but let me touch on this for a second. When you have dormant turf and geese, they're going to want to continue to feed on there. It's hard to get the enough material on there because it just isn't growing. It's not succulent. One thing I might suggest, and you may have done this, was to add a sticker. like a trans film or something like that. So let's move to the next section, and I'm gonna touch on all those points, and I'll go through this, and then we'll revisit that question.
Okay.
Is that fine? And who is this, Johnny?
It's Keith.
Keith. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. My screen isn't telling me who's talking, so I do apologize.
Okay.
Okay. Where do you make the application? And you're going to want to treat the drop zone. And what the drop zone is the heaviest concentration of droppings in an area. This is a typical scenario where you have a pond, which is safety, and then you have the food, which is the manicured, fertilized turf. So the geese are going to feel safe on feeding in a certain area, and that's where you're going to see the droppings. That's going to be your drop zone. You're going to want to treat that. Now, there may be some people that they're like, hey, I don't want any geese on my property, period. Then that's a conversation you need to have with them about treating everything. But primarily, you're going to want to treat the drop zone. What they'll do is they're going to go to a different area to feed once you treat their drop zone, and they're very specific where they feed. Some of the treatment strategies that we develop with applicators such as yourself and a network of some of the larger lawn care companies is the March-April time frame. And I know you guys have snow on the ground. We did till about 2 days ago, and we were out making applications yesterday. One of the strategies is to treat the drop zone every 2 weeks. When you have a lot of flush growth, grass is being mowed. Up here in Ohio, we're dealing with cool season grass, so it grows the most in the spring and the fall. We're going to put it down at a reduced rate, at a half a gallon per acre to 3/4 of a gallon per acre, but we're going to do it more frequent, every 2 to 3 weeks. We need to get this material in the geese. If it's getting mowed off, it's not doing anybody any good, so we're going to put it down. You're using the same amount of material as the 3 ounce per gallon rate, but you're cutting that in half, and you're doing it more often. So instead of doing it every 4 weeks, one of the strategies during the flush growth is to do it every 2 weeks at a reduced rate. When you get into late May, early August periods of dormancy with the cool season grasses, you're going to use the same rate, the half gallon to 3/4 gallon, but you're not going to treat it as often as you just don't have the growth. Now, Keith, in your case, it sounds like that's when you guys were having the failure. I would put a sticker in there like a trans film. If you don't have a proper leaf surface for the material to stick, the trans film is going to help stick that on there. If you have dormant turf or dry turf, that's going to be your challenge. When you get into the late application, and I always call it the last treatment of the year after the final cutting, you're going to want to put the flake control down at the 1 gallon rate. If you apply that after the final cutting, it's going to work for you over the winter. We had a record snowfall in Northeast Ohio, 60, 70 some inches. Applications made last fall, we're still working through the winter. We had freeze thaw, and we had geese, the resident geese, they're going to want to stick around and feed. It'll still stick on there, so it will not wash off at the higher rates over the winter. When you do go to make the application, you've defined the drop zone. This is a backpack application. When you go to drop or apply the flight control, you want a very fine droplet. This application on the left, it's a backpack sprayer. It's got the heavier droplet size. The application on the right is a proper application. It's the same backpack sprayer, but you can see the difference in the spray pattern. Remember, geese can see it, so you want to think of it as painting the area with the flight control. If you miss a small area, a foot section between passes, the geese are going to see it, and they're going to go and feed there, and you just won't get the desired results. And then, we talked about adding the sticker for the late fall applications. When it's hot and dry, you have dormant turf, it's a good idea to add it as well. Okay, a couple things for best practice. So when you do apply Flight Control Plus, always mow the grass prior to an application. Best case scenario is applying it directly after it's been cut. Remove any heavy clippings, leaves, or other debris, including droppings. I was at a site a few days ago where landscape company hasn't done the cleanup. They're going to come in, clean it up, pick up the leaves, And they're also going to clean up the droppings because the grass is about a ½ inch tall. There's roosting piles. It's just a mess. So you want as much leaf surface as possible before you make the application. Never apply to wet turf, and that includes dew when it's hot and a lot of high humidity and it's dewy in the morning. Do not apply it. It's going to slide right off the grass blade. If you walk through it and your boots get wet, don't spray it. Wait till it's dry. Always apply the label recommendations as far as wind speed. Don't apply 3 hours prior to rainfall, a storm, or an irrigation cycle. And when you apply it, and we'll talk about it a little bit in the next slide, don't drag a hose through the application because it can knock it off the grass blade. It typically dries in about 30 minutes or less. A day like today in Ohio, it's going to be 70, it's sunny. 15 minutes to a half hour, it's going to be dry and ready to go. Okay, some of the sprayers to use, as I mentioned earlier, only apply it with a fine tip nozzle such as a backpack sprayer, a weed wand, a turf tractor. Some of the name brands would be like the LT Rich ride-on machines or the Permagreen machines, a liquid TTA unit. What you really want to stay away from is a Chemlon gun or a JD9 gun. Even with a 1.5 gallon nozzle, it's not going to give you the desired droplet size. If you think of it this way, if you dip a pencil in a glass of water, you pull it out, you get that drop that comes off that pencil. That's too big of a droplet. That's what the Chemlon gun's going to do. The JD9 will provide a proper droplet size. However, it's normally attached to a hose, and that hose is following you after you make the application. It's going to knock the material off. And Keith, this goes to part of your question too. We recommend a sticker such as Transfilm, Vapor Guard, or Wilt Proof. The Vapor Guard's kind of a really sticky, messy. I recommend the Transfilm. It's a lot easier to use. It's relatively inexpensive. It's pennies on the acre to apply that. And then once you do make an application, keep everybody off the area until it's dry. You don't want to walk through it or have kids go through it or pets. Once it's dry, it's not coming off and it's safe to go on there. So use the 30-minute rule. Mm-hmm. And what to expect after a Flight Control Plus application. Geese are going to feed on the turf. They're going to ingest it. They're going to get the learned response. It takes about 45 minutes. I've seen it work sooner. They're going to start shaking their head, honking. I've seen them peck at their chest. This is the learned response. Now, remember, it's not making them sick. It's not hurting them in any way. In fact, PETA and the American Humane Society, they do recommend our brand of goose repellent as a humane way to treat geese. So once they've learned it, they're going to see the Flight Control Plus, and they're not going to come on the turf. You may have several flocks in the area, or getting back to you, Keith, you may have some transient geese coming in there depending on the time frame. So after you make an application, I always say wait 4 to 5, 6 days for all the geese in the area to feed on it. Once they fed on it, then they're going to realize that, hey, this isn't a good place to eat. Okay, so getting back to questions, as far as your site there, Keith, if you can do it with 3 applications, that's awesome. Again, every site's going to be different, depending on the goose activity. And it sounded like there were some resident geese and some transient geese. But if you can hit it right when the geese are there, then you could do the lesser of the applications. But if you do get breaks where geese are going to want to come into that site, then it's always good to have it covered. So in Ohio, we have about an 8-month growing season. If you do the 6-month treatment, you're basically a little over once a month on the properties. In the spring, you're going to be out there every 2 weeks, but that's when the majority of the applications or the majority of the activity starts over here. So any other questions on how to make the application? Keith, does that answer your question for your site there in Wisconsin?
It does.
Okay.
You always know that those, according to what you have here, the March, April, May applications, are you using the higher percentage concentrate for just the first one or for all of them?
Well, here's the concept. I have always used a gallon rate, no matter what. But I was doing the applications every 4 weeks in the spring. What we're saying is, we know the grass is growing. You can go to the half rate or the 3/4 rate, but you're going to apply it more often. So with the lower rate, you're applying the same amount of material as you would in that month period, but you're applying it twice. So you're getting, every 2 weeks. And if you bump it up to the 3/4 rate, and again, it just depends on the goose pressure. I treated a site yesterday. I used a higher rate just because of the activity. They were on this site. They were munching a bunch of Fritos. They were just killing this turf. It was very short turf. It was mowed down to about a quarter, half inch. So I put it on at the higher rate. So it just depends. Just depends on your site.
Okay.
We're just trying to make this as economical as possible for you and for your customers. We did some testing with the lower rates, but again, the tell-all would be your site and what's going to work best for you.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm not sure if this is related to this section, but my understanding of how this product works is after a flock of geese feed on the product,
mm-hmm.
and they make that relationship between the visual and the stomach irritation,
mm-hmm.
they'll see a section of turf treated from the air, and they're not going to even go there. Is that basically what happens?
That's our perception. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what I guess I'm getting at is that if you're having success throughout the first half of the growing season, and you cut back to a lower rate, it should technically continue to repel the geese, because they'll see this and they'll make that relationship between discomfort and that visual, what they're seeing on the turf.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Another way to look at it is, as long as you keep the material on the turf, it's and they've ingested it, they see it, they know to stay off of it. But I'm going to tell you, the minute you miss an area or you don't treat for 2 months, they're going to be right back on there because they're going to see it. So, depending on your customer site and your growing pattern, really dictates. I mean, we can give you some general guidelines, but it just depends on the site, and who knows what the weather's going to do this year. But it's a pretty safe bet you're going to have goose activity in the spring and the fall, and that's when a lot of the flush growth works. So, but yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, we believe that they can see it from the air, and they won't feed on it, and they're smart critters. I mean, I've seen geese. You apply it for, a question always comes up. Hey Joe, if I've applied this for 3 years, do I need to do it this year again? I think we've trained all the geese in the area, and the answer is absolutely, because you're always going to get new geese going to want to come in that area. Geese that were hatched in that area looking for a food source. That drop zone is a restaurant for them. Yeah, it's two things: food and safety. So, you always want to keep up to continue the applications, because unfortunately the goose population is just increasing. So
it seems like it. Now, from some of the things I've read about goose biology, is that they have somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 areas within their, if you want to call it, their home range. So they'll land like at my customer's house, but then they might go to another lake or another field, and they'll have 5 or 6 of these or 8 of these different spots where they'll feed. So if we have transient geese coming from someplace where someone else is using flight control, and they'll land on this lake where my customer is at, would they be preconditioned to stay away from that turf because they've experienced it somewhere else?
Yes, and because you have to remember, It's a learned response. So if they've ingested it in Iowa and they're flying back up to, the St. James Bay, or they're going up to Manitoba or wherever they go up north, and they stop for rest and food on your site, it's going to look the same. It's going to taste the same as those geese. So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And you are correct, because geese, what they'll do in the spring, their main things are reproduction and food. Okay, so they're going to set up shop in an area right now where they can feed, where they feel safe, and they can hatch their young. Once they've hatched their young, the adults go through a molt period. They're not able to fly. The young ones aren't able to fly, and that's a worst case scenario. So if you have geese on a site like that, you're going to have geese, and that's really where the Flight Control Plus comes in, because it takes away their food source. After they go through that molt and the young ones can fly, then they're going to go through what's called pond hopping and foraging, and that's late summer, early fall. In Ohio, it coincides with the wheat harvest, and geese are just going from site to site to site to site. And that's why people say, well, I only have them in the spring, but I don't have them in the summer, or I have them in the fall. And but you're absolutely correct. They'll pond hop and forage, and they'll have several sites where they feed. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, some of the sales tools that we're going to help you guys out with is we have a very nice trifold brochure. It's currently on our website, and we will supply your company with that. There's going to be some contact information here at the end of the presentation. You're going to email Ernie. If you guys are able to make a screenshot or write his email down, it'll be here in a couple other slides. It's a nice brochure. You can put your company logo on the back, hand it to your customer. It's a great sales tool. I use it a lot. It'll help you sell the service. Also, there's a link on our website, flightcontrol.com, and it has all the brochures, the MSDS, the labels, the story. It tells about geese behavior, geese anatomy, the whole 9 yards, everything you want to know about a goose. It's on there. There's also a link for Brain Shark that tells the story. If you have a smartphone, your customer does, you can click on that and you can show them, and they can hear the story of Flight Control Plus. So the website again is flightcontrol.com. And for more information, again, flightcontrol.com. And to get those brochures, you're going to want to contact Ernie Porta. He's the CEO of the company, and his email is right there. And the 1-877-554-3373 number is another way to reach Ernie. But I encourage you guys, write that down, screenshot this if you're able to, and get a hold of Ernie, get those brochures. They're free of charge. Just let him know how many you're going to need, and it's a nice professional looking tool that you can use. So my presentation is over. With that said, does anybody have any other questions that I could address for them at this time?
I have a question as far as, well, do you have any other recommendations of other methods to use in conjunction with Flight Control? I mean, we don't use dogs or anything like that. And basically, I'm a pest control operator, but I've had this customer for 10 years.
Okay.
On the lake. And they've tried everything prior to going with, and we did it as an experiment, basically, the Flight Control.
Okay.
But they've tried everything. They tried fishing line, and again, they have 400 feet of lake.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing that they did on their own was really successful in the long term. But my question is, should Flight Control just stand on its own, or is there another method that we can try to, like when they go pond hopping or things like that, or just continue to let the product work by itself?
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing. What Flight Control is designed to do is stop them from feeding. So if they don't eat, they're not going to create the droppings. Now, it doesn't keep the geese completely off the property. And every site's different. And I know that's the political answer, but if they're nesting there, and geese return to where they learn to fly, and they're going to nest at a pretty close area. So any other methods that you can employ. I had a lady in Pittsburgh. She started off with border collies, and she realized that, hey, this isn't the silver bullet. So she started using remote controlled boats and remote controlled airplanes, and it was great fun, and it was great to watch her. And they would do some exclusion fencing, and they would do fireworks and lasers, and they would do flight control. The one thing about flight control is it stays on the turf 24/7, and it's going to work at night. It's going to work in the rain. It's going to, if applied to a dry surface, it's going to work when you're not there. Yet, if you do have a severe problem with geese, any other of those methods in conjunction with flight control is beneficial. So, flight control isn't a silver bullet either. It's not a fit-all situation, but it does take the feeding equation away from the geese. And that's the problem, is the droppings. What I would always tell people is flight control will dramatically reduce the droppings on an area. Now, with that said, if that scenario you're talking about, Keith, if there's people out there, if it's a corporate site or an office, and people are out there feeding them breadcrumbs, and I don't care what you do, it's not going to work. If there's hand feeding available and people are doing it, it's not going to work. So they're still going to create the droppings, even though they're not eating the turf. You'll still see the droppings. So I've seen people do exclusion fencing. Well, they'll put up a fence depending on the scenario when the geese are there. They modify the habitat around the pond, riprap. They put up shrubs. I've seen people use fake coyotes. Harley Davidson, for I think it was their 100th anniversary of 10 or so years back, they used coyotes and flight control and border collies. They had this huge gala where they had all these people from across the country, and they used those three things, and it worked very well to keep the geese off their parking lot. So. But flight control will definitely keep them from feeding on the turf.
Okay. Have you had any experience with any states, DNR or the state-run environmental agencies restricting the product at all?
Well, no, I do know that in Ohio, when they introduced this product, me being from Ohio, I work very closely with them. And when they first talked to us, they're like, that stuff doesn't work. You need to set up goose roundups, and you need to do a lethal goose roundup and egg addling. And they're right. But flight control, they're right about the addling and the egg deprivation and nest destruction. But flight control has a place in that also. And they're starting to realize and recognize that. And in Ohio, they're becoming more and more flight control user friendly. They're working with flight control applicators because they realize that, hey, it is a safe, effective way to control geese. Now, I can't speak of any other states, Keith, because I just, when I rep this product, it's been about 10 years ago, and some of the states were looking at it and some weren't, but I would encourage you to check with your local DNR and see where they are with it. And if they need any information, we're more than happy to talk to them. You can direct them to us or myself or Ernie, and we can educate them on flight control.
Right.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else from anybody else? All right. With that said, I appreciate your time, guys. And again, I encourage you guys to get the brochures from Ernie. Check out the website. A lot of useful tools on there. And if you guys need anything, reach out to us, and we'll help you out in any way we can. So thank you, guys, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.